Hello and welcome back to the channel. I am Josh and today we are continuing with part 4 of our series, The History of South Africa. The Wars against the Xhosa. In early South Africa, European notions of national boundaries and land ownership had no counterparts in African political culture. To Mashushu, the Basotho chieftain from Lesotho, it was customary to tribute in the form of horses and cattle represented acceptance of land use under his authority. To European settlers in southern Africa, the same form of tribute was believed to constitute purchase and permanent ownership of the land under independent authority. As European settlers started establishing permanent farms after trekking across the country in search of prime agricultural land, they encountered resistance from the local Bantu people who had originally migrated southwards from Central Africa hundreds of years earlier. The consequent frontier wars became known as the Xhosa Wars, which were also referred to in contemporary discussion known as the Kafir Wars or Cape Frontier Wars. In the southeastern part of South Africa, Boer settlers and the Xhosa clashed along the Great Fish River, and in 1779 the First Xhosa War broke out. For nearly 100 years subsequently, the Xhosa fought the settlers sporadically, first the Boers or Afrikaners, and later the British. In the Fourth Xhosa War, which lasted from 1811 to 1812, the British colonial authorities forced the Xhosa back across the Great Fish River and established forts along this boundary. The increasing economic involvement of the British in southern Africa from 1820, and especially following the discovery of the first diamonds at Kimberley and gold in the Transvaal, resulted in pressure for land and African labour and led to increasingly tense relations with southern African states. In 1818, differences between two Xhosa leaders, Ndebele and Griqua, ended in Griqua's defeat, but the British continued to recognize Griqua as the paramount chief. He appealed to the British for help against Ndebele, who retaliated in 1819 during the Fifth Frontier War by attacking the British colonial town of Grahamstown. Wars against the Zulu. In the eastern part of what is today South Africa, in the region named Natalia by the Boer trackers, the latter negotiated an agreement with the Zulu king Ndebele Kasezangane Khona, allowing the Boers to settle in parts of then Zulu kingdom. Cattle rustling ensued, and a party of Boers under the leadership of Piet Retief were killed. Subsequent to the killing of the Retief party, the Boers defended themselves against a Zulu attack at the Nkome River on the 16th of December 1838. An estimated 5,000 Zulu warriors were involved. The Boers took a defensive position with the high banks of the Nkome River forming a natural barrier to their rear and their ox wagons as barricades between themselves and the attacking Zulu army. About 3,000 Zulu warriors died in the clash, known historically as the Battle of Blood River. In the later annexation of the Zulu kingdom by Imperial Britain, an Anglo-Zulu war was fought in 1879. Following Lord Carnarvon's successful introduction of federation in Canada, it was thought that a similar political effort coupled with military campaigns would succeed with the African kingdoms, tribal areas and Boer republics in South Africa. In 1874, Henry Bartle Frere was sent to South Africa as High Commissioner for the British Empire to bring such plans into being. Among the obstacles were the presence of the independent states of the South African Republic and the Zulu Kingdom and the Kingdom of Zululand and its army. Frere, on his own initiative, without the approval of the British government and with the intent of instigating a war with the Zulu, had presented an ultimatum on the 11th of December 1878 to the Zulu king Cetshwayo, with which the Zulu king could not comply. Bartle Frere then sent Lord Chelmsford to invade Zululand. The war was notable for several particularly bloody battles, including an overwhelming victory by the Zulu at the Battle of Isildwana, as well as being a landmark in the timeline of imperialism for the region. Wars with the Basotho. From the 1830s onwards, numbers of white settlers from the Cape Colony crossed the Orange River and started arriving in the fertile southern part of the territory known as the Lower Caledon Valley, which was occupied by Basotho cattle herders under the authority of the Basotho founding monarch Moshoeshoe I. In 1845, a treaty was signed between the British colonialists and Moshoeshoe, which recognized white settlement in the area. No firm boundaries were drawn between the area of the white settlement and Moshoeshoe's kingdom, which led to border clashes. Moshoeshoe was under the impression he was loaning grazing land to the settlers in accordance with African precepts of occupation rather than ownership, while the settlers believed they were granted permanent land rights. Afrikaner settlers in particular were loath to live under Moshoeshoe's authority and among Africans. The British, who at the time controlled the area between the Orange River and the Vaal River, called the Orange River Sovereignty, decided a discernible boundary was necessary and proclaimed a line named the Warden Line, dividing the area between British and Basotho territories. This led to conflict with the Basotho and the British, who were defeated by Moshoeshoe's warriors at the Battle of Viervoet in 1851. A succession of wars followed in 1858 to 1868 between the Basotho Kingdom and the Boer Republic of the Orange Free State. In the battles that followed, the Orange Free State tried unsuccessfully to capture Moshoeshoe's mountain stronghold at Thabo Boslu, while the Sotho conducted raids in the Free State territories. Both sides adopted scorched earth tactics, with large swathes of pasturage and cropland being destroyed. Faced with starvation, Moshoeshoe signed a peace treaty on the 15th of October 1858, though crucial boundary issues remained unsolved. War broke out in 1865 after an unsuccessful appeal for aid from the British Empire. Moshoeshoe signed the 1866 Treaty of Thabo Boslu, and the Basotho ceding substantial territory to the Orange Free State. On the 12th of March 1868, the British Parliament declared the Basotho Kingdom a British protectorate and part of the British Empire. Open hostilities ceased between the Orange Free State and Basotho. The country was subsequently named Basotholand and presently named Lesotho. Wars with Ndebele. In 1836, when Boer trackers, pioneers, arrived in the northwestern part of the present-day South Africa, they came into conflict with a Ndebele subgroup that settlers named Matabele, under Chief Mzilikazi. A series of battles ensued, in which Mzilikazi was eventually defeated. He withdrew from the area and led his people northwards to what would later become the Matabele region of southern Rhodesia, now Zimbabwe. Wars with Bapedi. The Bapedi Wars, also known as Sekhukhune Wars, consisted of 3 separate campaigns fought between 1876 and 1879 against the Bapedi under the reigning monarch King Sekhukhune I. In the northeastern region known as Sekhukhune land, bordering on Swaziland, further friction was caused by the refusal of Sekhukhune to allow prospectors to search for gold in territory he considered to be sovereign and independent under his authority. The First Sekhukhune War in 1876 was conducted by the Boers, and the two separate campaigns of the Second Kukukune War of 1878 and 1879 were conducted by the British. During the final campaign, Sekukune, also spelled Sekukune, and members of his entourage took refuge in the mountain cave where he was cut off from food and water. He eventually surrendered to combined deputation of Boer and British forces on the 2nd of December 1879. Sekukune, members of his family, and some Bapedi generals were subsequently imprisoned in Pretoria for 2 years, with Sekukune land becoming part of the Transvaal Republic. No gold was ever discovered in the annexed territory. Thank you for listening to me today. If you're enjoying this series of the history of South Africa, please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button so that YouTube can tell you when a new video has been released, and the notification bell will ensure that you get the first access to it. Thank you for listening. Stay safe and stay strong.